Ash, my brother, welcome.
It's great to be back. It's been 4 years, mate.
Crazy.
4 years.
4 years.
Whizzed by.
Since our last podcast together. So I got Ash onto my old school podcast, Limitless.
Limitless, that was it?
Yeah, it was an incredible conversation.
Yeah.
And just, it's so nice that I think we've managed to sort of remain in touch since then. And I mean, so much has happened in that 4 year period.
A lot for both of us. Yeah.
It's been exciting.
Yeah, it has.
You know, and I think what the reason why I love chatting to you, and I know anybody that's going to listen to this episode, I think the way you articulate yourself, and I think it's one of the arts you have, I think is just spoken word. It's the energy that I think you bring to it, and I think that's something that's very difficult to teach. I think that's within, and I think having the ability to tell a story is such a gift. And I think that's why people are so invested in what it is that you say.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. Yeah, means a lot. And it's great to be here with a great host. As I said before we started this, you are still my mother's favourite podcast. Of all the podcasts I've done.
Yeah, I mean, she's probably going to question what happened to me after 4 years dressed like this.
She'll see this now, fresh out of Texas almost.
Dude, honestly, do you know, I just, being in America, they just don't give a shit. No. They dress how they like. They're super complimentary. And I bought so many different pieces, and I just thought, do you know what? Like, I'm with Ash today. He doesn't give a shit. I don't give a shit. So I'm going to wear this.
It's got to be done.
And he'll be able to hold his own with a straight face throughout it. At no point is he going to look at me going, what on earth is he wearing?
I actually think, I said to you before, Lee pulled it off. It looks cool.
Dude, I'm just down for it. But the thing is, the minute I walk out that studio, I'm in no man's land.
Yeah.
Here, this is a safe
thing,
space.
Isn't it? You'll get looked at outside, which is a shame as well, isn't it? Because, but as Brits, we're told to stay in lane, and be humble and sit down and be quiet. And the US are total opposite. Be loud, get out there, do what you want, wear what you want. And I do love that mentality as well.
For sure. I mean, ultimately, we're on a running podcast right now, and I'm dressed as a cowboy, so...
And I'm not a runner.
Well, the thing is, though, you say that, but you are. You hosted You hosted your own run the other day, which I thought was an amazing idea, just because obviously that brings your community together.
Yeah.
For those of you that don't know Dash, I mean, obviously in this podcast, we're going to delve pretty deep into what he does and what he has coming up, because I think it's one of the most exciting things. In a couple of weeks' time, he will be setting off on his next adventure. Mm-hmm. And that is what if somebody asks you the question, like, what do you do? What would your title or role be?
You know what? As of probably a month ago, it would have been adventurer or extreme athlete or explorer. But I was trying to explain it to someone who didn't really know what that meant a couple of weeks ago. And then one of my producers came over and she said, I'm just trying to work out what Ash does. And she just nailed it. She said, he's an international TV host and presenter. And she understood. I'm like, why haven't I been saying that?
Yeah.
I'm about to produce my third TV show, potentially. And I'm just like, why don't I think that's because I don't see myself as a host, as a TV presenter. And extreme athlete adventurer sounds pretty cool.
So I think what's really interesting about you is that when you look at a lot of, familiar profiles on our screens who do similar things to yourself, a lot of them come with quite a substantial background. Mm-hmm. Military maybe being the prominent one. You didn't have any of this, and I think that's what really kind of sets you apart. Mm-hmm. That a lot of this has almost been self-taught, and it came off the back of you traveling, right?
Yeah, it did. Age 19, work at multiple jobs. Off I went. Self-taught. When I say self-taught, learning from the locals, in a very dangerous way, is a legal way, crossing borders with no permit, being taken under the wing of like a Burmese hill tribe, for example, teach me everything how to survive in the jungle. At 19, you remember that kind of stuff, right? And then you only try to enhance and develop on that, not only in the jungle, but then the desert, then in the mountains. And then over the past decade, I've just made it my mission to tick off land, air, and sea. Get all of my sea-based qualifications, scuba dive and powerboat license, you name it. Get land, sort of winter mountaineering, avalanche awareness, jungle survival, desert survival, mountain survival, martial arts as well, and then air, get my paragliding, paramotoring, skydiving licenses. And so, since a young age, I always sort of was fascinated with Action Man, with James Bond. I'm thinking, I don't necessarily want to be 100% in any one specific thing. I'd like to dabble, be 60 to 80% in lots of different things. And I just have always had that fascination. So age 19, I set off and learn all of these on the go type of thing, you know.
I'm interested to know, do you think being Welsh works in your favour or against you? Because I think from a cultural point of view,
Yeah.
if you look at your roots, is that an asset to you, I guess, when you expose yourself to different environments? Because, you know, when you think of the Welsh culture, the people, you know, what they've had to go through in life, the hardships, the resilience that comes with that, there's a huge amount of pride and determination.
Yeah.
And I think that's why the Welsh, for me, as a nation, a culture, stand out so much. But then I guess when it comes from like a marketing point of view, would you say that can sometimes maybe go against you when it comes to televising things like that? How much more desirable would someone say from from England be than someone from Wales?
Yeah, it definitely plays against me being Welsh, because if you hear my accent as well, it's not really a strong accent. I can't speak Welsh, so I don't slot into Wales and their marketing plans either. And then coming over to England have had my back and have shown so much more support than Wales, but I'm still Welsh, I'm not English. And so and I get accused a lot at the finish line. When I finish my expeditions, I always hold up the Union Jack, you know, because I'm British, I'm from the United Kingdom. And a lot of people hate on that as well. You know, why are you holding up the British? Like, because I'm British. I don't view myself particularly as Welsh. And maybe it's that lack of being sort of patriotic that also goes against me. But I think that was taught. I think I realised that there's no support there in Wales. There's no interest. And, you know, effectively, it's probably why I moved from Wales to London, you know, a year and a half ago. It's because it was happening here, which is a shame, but it is what it is.
I can relate to that. I mean, I have such an affiliation with each nation within the United Kingdom. And so for me, I with pride will always raise that flag.
Yeah, right.
And, you know, I think being a realist, you know, like you said there, you know, you are born and raised Wales. Your heart and your dream would always be to represent your nation. But if your nation isn't investing in you, it's not a case of you're shunning them by raising that flag, but there are going to be a lot of people within the United Kingdom in a similar situation to you that will empathize with that, and they probably feel isolated. And so for me, it's more of a message of unity.
Yeah.
Go
100%.
further, go stronger together.
Yeah, exactly. And my mum's English, my granddad is Irish, you know, so I have got, it's not just pure Welsh blood. There's a good mix.
Are you, how are you feeling now, I guess, leading up to this next challenge? Because I think, you know, a lot of people actually, when it comes to it, they'll always look at the challenge itself and specifically focus on what it is that you're enjoying in that moment. Anybody that has set themselves any challenge, no matter how big or small, will understand actually the process leading up to that sometimes can be the hardest part. That's where the challenge really lies, because in your head, you're going to fantasize and dream about how this can be, I guess, organized, I guess how it can be promoted to people on a national or global scale. But the reality is actually you aren't the hurdle. The hurdle is what you're faced leading up to it. And you know, we've spoken about this with previous challenges that you've done. You know, funding is such an instrumental part to anything that you do, but it's so difficult to get your hands on. Broadcasters are so incredibly difficult to even connect with, let alone being featured. And it's such a shame when you know that you've created something that people would be fascinated to watch.
Yeah, 100%. And it's painful because, you know, the other day, I put a TikTok reel of all of the crazy stuff that I've done since 2010. And I think there were 2.5 to 3,000 comments. There were almost 3 million views, all saying, where can we watch this show? Where can we watch this movie? And, you know, it was nice to see that. But at the same time, it was a case of, I've got a long way to go before I get it. It's a shame that I'm not best buddies with a Netflix commissioner, because it's almost who you know sometimes. And I do know that if I was, all of this that I've done would have definitely been turned into some sort of national or international TV show or a feature film, 60 minutes, 9 minutes, because it is absolutely insane. And I'm sure people will see this and be like, that's very arrogant. But I've been very humble over the past 80% of my career, and I've realised that that's really getting me nowhere. And in order to get somewhere, I've got to do a little bit of screaming and shouting, and I've got to sort of take pride in what I've done and shout about that a little bit more. A lot of my expeditions were effectively promised TV shows, Mongolia was, Madagascar was, but they didn't break in. Mongolia was when I was 23. That was a world first record, really hard to find. And it was to hike the entire length of Mongolia, completely solo, completely unsupported, no tarmac roads, no van, no people with me whatsoever, pulling the same weight as Tyson Fury behind me in a mild steel trailer, carrying everything that I needed to survive. So it was 3 weeks over the Altai Mountains, 5 weeks across the Gobi Desert, 3 weeks through the Mongolian steppe. It had been attempted 3 times before, solo and unsupported, but never completed. And I documented all of that. And then the next one was Madagascar, equally wild, held up at gunpoint, crocodile-infested rivers, caught the deadliest strain of malaria. The locals trying to attack me, bitten by spiders, leeches, sort of hacking through the jungle, hunting and gathering. 155-day journey that was. Again, no paths, no one goes there, just sort of hacking through the jungle. Filmed that for a documentary. Now, the Yangtze was where things changed in my career path. That was filmed for National Geographic, 2-part series. And in all fairness, this prompted on a big sort of multi-million-dollar 6-time 1-hour TV show following the entire length of the Great Wall of China. But what I'm disappointed with is in China, things are very big. Internationally, things are growing. My latest TV show has been across mainland Europe. It's airing across America. It's airing across South America, every Asian country, but not the UK. Again. So there's like the 4th big thing, very big thing that I've done, and there's still no sign of TV. Now, Channel 4, I haven't discussed this, but Channel 4 were on board. They were on board, and that's what gave all of this initially the green light. Flew out to China. I was in 17-day lockdown. We'd been working now with Channel 4 for about 4.5, 5 months. I'm on the 10th or 11th day of isolation because it was during COVID 2022. And Channel 4 pulled out because Liz Truss became the new Prime Minister. Something changed. Don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but something changed whereby the UK broadcasting, I don't know if it was Channel 4 or TV in general, couldn't co-fund a government-funded project in China. So it fell through. Otherwise, they had purchased 3 1-hour episodes of The Great War. And I was out there. It was a done deal. But the contract last minute fell through without the signatures.
What do these challenges mean to you? Like, why do you do them?
I think it's just in my blood. I think there's something there that I've always been very competitive and very athletic as a youngster now, taking it back to when I was, a young boy. But then I've always been very curious and fascinated with the world, everything about it, the different people, cultures, traditions, the whole lot. And so when I went into college after high school, I was in all of the sports you can imagine. When I went to college, it was now sports meets outdoors, and I was doing a 2-year outdoor education course. And during this this critical 2-year course, I realized I was a kinesthetic learner. I realized that being sat in the classroom learning about other people's stories and their experiences, I don't absorb much that way. I need to go out there. I need to try, be hands-on, practical, make mistakes, learn from those mistakes, progress, develop. And after the 2-year course, I very much wanted to go off. I remember watching certain shows like David Attenborough shows, being inspired by this, thinking I don't want to just sit down and watch it from the lounge. I want to get out there, be amongst it. And then stories from people that I would meet, or pictures or films. And my granddad, although I've probably only seen him maybe 5, 6 times of my life, he's a wild man. When I say wild man, he lived in Pakistan, Karachi, for 21 years. A poor man has no money to his name, so he slept in a shed, which he put on some man's roof. It's a flat roof. And he was kind of like an eco-warrior. He was an activist fighting for the climate. He would, for free, teach and go into various different schools and talk about the importance of planting trees. And anyway, he overstayed his visa in Pakistan for about 15 years. Got to a point where they were like, well, we can't charge him because he doesn't have any money. What do we do with him? And this whole process of not knowing what to do with him took 2 years. They kicked him out. He now lives in India. And so, maybe there's something there genetically, but I love to push myself physically and mentally. I love the world, man. There's a huge passion for me and that's why I'm not choosing one specific. That's why everything that I do, I'm not really a specialist in the desert. I'm not really a desert explorer. I'm not really a jungle explorer. I'm not really a mountain, because I love it all. I love it all. Again, I'm not specialized in just skydiving and air-based. I love sea-based. I love land-based. And I think, it goes to the rooted, back to my roots of knowing when I was 15, 16, I just knew that, and that's at a really young age, but I knew I had a feeling that this life is going to whiz by. That's a weird thing to think of when you're 15, 16, but I knew it's going to whiz by. And I was kind of like, how do I want to spend my time? And I knew that in 2008, that was going against a lot of what the rest of the peers were doing, university, military. But I knew that I would regret if I went down a path that I didn't really, or wasn't really passionate about. And, the first few years of traveling, I wasn't on any social media. Pros and cons with that, I guess. But for me now, looking back, I think it's a big pro, because I was doing it for the pure love, for the pure passion. You couldn't make money online. You couldn't build a brand. It was either TV or not TV. And I wasn't interested in TV then. Didn't even know it was a career path. I had no idea doing the adventures back then that I'd be where I am today. It accidentally happened.
Do you think the reason why the world is in the state that it is because we are so far removed from our roots and the environment that we have been so used to for thousands of years that it's almost got to the point where humanity's forgotten where it came from?
100%. We're fully disconnected. And I see it. Or every sort of country that I travel to where I am doing an extreme expedition, and it takes me to the real rural, wild parts, and I see the locals there, my initial thought is not to feel sorry for them, of course, but they're living a hard life. I'm just going through their country thinking I'm a hard man, braving the elements for maybe a month or two. They live there. They do it every single day. And initially, I never forget the lesson I learned in Mongolia. The nomads sort of allowed me in, locals living in like a white felt tent a year. They allowed me in. They gave me food. They gave me hot water. They gave me comfort, shelter, wished me well the next day. And I went to offer them money. And they looked at me like I was dirt. They were well offended. They were like, we don't need your money. Because I think they perceived it as, that's me showing that I'm the rich man here. I'm better off. And they were like, no, we're the rich ones. Look at all of this land, horseback. They can ride for miles upon miles. They've got all the freedom. They're close-knit. They've got their family. They're not bombarded with technology and tasks. And they've not got to set an alarm clock and be there by 9 o'clock and get stressed, road rage because of the rush hour. They are living on their own timeline. And we see them and see them as being poor, but they're not. They're the rich ones, and they view us as the poor ones.
What is it that's kind of inspired the next challenge? What was it about that particular one? Because the Amazon is something that a lot will relate to. If you actually name what the current challenge is, but I think it is the Amazon that people will identify with.
Yeah, 100%. So this new one is, we're going to the Amazon. We're going to a country called Suriname. Now, Suriname is not a place many people have heard of. In fact, you say Suriname, most people will probably think it's an African country. It's the greenest country on the planet that is never really talked about. Potentially one of the most uncharted countries. And 94% of the country is just pure jungle coverage. And so this expedition, we're attempting to be the first to kayak from source to sea of the Kopanam River, which is its most central and remote river. Now, whilst we're doing this, the source, there's no evidence to suggest that the source has actually been mapped. But there are expeditions that have taken place in the 1800s. They tried to make it as far west, where they were actually mapping the interior of Suriname, but they didn't quite make the source. There's evidence that maybe in the 1900s people did, but the coordinates are missing. So we've also partnered up with mapping associations to supply them with the true source, if we find it, of the Kopanam River, which is in the 21st century, mind-blowing. So what went down as, a really cool adventure that I really wanted to undertake has turned into something much bigger than we ever anticipated. And some of the stories coming out are just mind-blowing. Because it's covered in jungle, we don't even know where we're going to land. And we're attempting to summit the highest peak and the second highest peak at the same time. So whilst it's not this big sort of 352-day journey like the Yangtze was, that was 4,000 miles across China following the Yangtze River, the intensity with this one is ramped right up. because any wrong step, any wrong footing, and it's not like the creatures or the jungle, should I say, is necessarily out to get you, because it's not, but it is out to protect itself. And there's even ferns and branches that you rub alongside. One way, you're fine. You rub down the opposite direction, it will rip your skin off. You stand on the back end of a snake, you're done for. Bullet ants, hornets, even in the river, piranha, electric eel, caiman, stingray, probably the one that I'm most nervous about. And then in the jungle, you've got the puma, you've got the jaguar, the snakes, the spiders, the anaconda. But
would there be any tribes there?
So I've spoke to the guys who live out in Suriname. So we've got two local guys who live there coming out, and they are zoologists, wildlife experts, snake handlers. And I asked them this question. And at first he said, no, I don't think so. And I'm like, but how do you know? And he was like, well, we would have seen them. And then I saw him look away and he started to think. And I'm like, what are you thinking? And he says, I was with a community. He said, most of the communities have an airstrip. There's only one community out in the Amazon of Suriname that doesn't have a school and an airstrip. And it was one of the communities that told him they continue to be hassled by an uncontacted tribe. I'm like, okay, so there's signs of uncontacted tribes, but because you haven't seen it, you say you don't know. He was like, yeah. He was like, but he did come across a dugout canoe, and he knows that the communities don't use dugout canoe. He knows the canoes that they use, and this one was recent, and it was just left ditched on the side of a riverbank. I'm like, recent? And he was like, yeah, he was last there a month before, and it wasn't there. So, like, shit. Who knows? But to put it out there, we don't want to come across any uncontacted tribes, and if there is any signs, we will do absolutely everything to avoid it, to avoid them,
because unfortunately,
out of respect,
but also they are there to protect themselves.
Exactly.
You are the alien in that situation.
Yeah, and you don't know what we have that we could pass on, viruses wise, diseases wise. So I think there's a 99% chance that we will not come across an uncontacted tribe, but if we do get signs, we will steer clear for sure.
This week's episode is sponsored by Runner. Runner is a personalized running coaching app helping runners of all abilities train for any goal. From a first 5K to a marathon, even an ultra marathon. When the time is right for you, your plan can be created within a minute and ready to go. With each plan, Runner provides all the help a runner requires, including strength and conditioning, and you can also reach out to the team at any time via the support tab inside the app. For a 2-week free trial on any personalized running plan, use the code PHOENIX. No matter your goal, Runner is there to help you achieve it. I guess to make this relatable, because people are going to find themselves in anxious situations in life.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, every step, when you're on that water, any bit of contact is the difference between life and death.
Yeah.
How do you ease your mindset when coping with something like that? Because I think when you listen to like Alex Honnold, right?
Mm-hmm.
He did what was his documentary?
Free Solo.
Yeah, Free Solo.
Yeah.
I think his biggest asset, or people used to say to him, was, surely it's more dangerous for you to do that without any support. And he said, well, actually, no, I would dispute that. Because I know every decision I make is life and death, my thought process is far more calm and collected when I make that decision.
Mm.
Knowing I have that protection, I may be more irrational in my decision making.
Yeah.
I'd be fascinated to know with you how that is. Is that just the case? You have to calm the mindset?
That. Yeah. And I think any form of outside distraction could jeopardize not just the expedition, but your life, especially in his case when there's no ropes whatsoever. And time again, I found it with the Yangtze. This is where it hit me the most. What I've learned, and you'll be able to relate to this, is you don't know how far you've come until you see people trying to keep up. And that's what it exactly was with me with the Yangtze. I'd done Mongolia, done Madagascar, but I'm very happy-go-lucky, very cheerful individual. People say, oh, I want to join you. I'm like, yeah, come and join me. We're wild good fun. I'd love the company. But in the Yangtze, it got dangerous, man. We had soldiers evacuated. As I said, no tarmac road, no cars, no vehicles. No, we are out there. Same altitude as Mount Everest base camp. The bears are now coming off the mountains because it's torpor season, so they're looking for food actively. There's wolves, in which we were followed by a pack for 2 days. And in general, I found that when I allowed people to join me, they were hit by that shock of capture and that very harsh reality of, oh shit, like this sucks. And their mindset would just be warped and they would want out. They would end up getting altitude sickness, or they would have fear of the wildlife, or that sense of vulnerability, or any other injury, or something would happen that they think when they're back home, oh, what I'll do is just this, I'll just do that, I'll overcome it this way, he should have done that. And my UK photographer, when he flew out, capable in the outdoors, but a photographer, he was met with a landslide, and he should have been with me for 3 weeks. He lasted 6 hours on day number 1 before he was sent back to the UK. So there's certain things that pop up that I've realised I'm able to overcome calmly, collected, have this situational awareness to know how I'm going to overcome or get through this next challenge. And over the years, I don't know how many thousands of times I've faced that, but it's at a point now where it's almost just second nature. It would be like editing or going into Photoshop or Premiere Pro. You see them and they're just like, boom, they know exactly where to go, what to do. You put me on Premiere Pro and I'd be like 10 minutes just to find the first basic thing that I'm looking for, Whereas he was thrown into my world, and it was at that point I had 10 individuals. 2 of those were soldiers, all evacuated. And I put a close on it for 6 months then. I didn't open it up until it was safe to do so. And luckily, everyone who were evacuated, they were safe, they were fine, everyone survived. But it has made me very cautious because I don't want anyone, touch wood, dying on my watch. And I forget how far I've come. Again, like most people in industries, you've got to climb that ladder.
Well, that's where the synergy's got to come into it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they've got to have a very similar mindset and be exposed to those sorts of harsh realities.
Yeah.
Creating content is one thing. When you're live, breathing, and sleeping this shit, it's a whole different ball game.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm trying to train. So I've got a producer. I've got Jacob coming out with me. He's a marathon runner, ultra marathon, runs up mountains. He's fit and he's strong. But again, this is a whole different ball game. So I'm trying to give him different ways to train and exercise, because I know that he's going to need to be really pushed to be there mentally. Because when you're out there, and I've got him into Muay Thai as well. The Muay Thai really helps. Totally different to the jungle. But effectively, when you're so exhausted, it's then that the little steps and decisions count the most. When you're so exhausted and you're clumsy and you rub up against a bamboo, which has spiky hairs that will just set hundreds into you, or you step onto a hornet's nest or a bullet ant's nest, or whatever happens, when he is so exhausted, he's got to still keep that situational awareness on point. And that's the hardest. That's the hardest.
It's those make or break moments. I think those are the greatest asset you can possibly have, because I think it's all about that muscle and my memory. You've been through it so many times before. And so if you're lucky enough to have similar team members each time, I keep mine very, very similar. It's very, very rare that a new addition will come into it. Yeah. And if they do, it's purely just based on schedule and things clashing. I think it's just more when I find myself in those incredibly tough situations, truthfully, there are definitely times where more often than not I'll get myself through it. Yeah. But as I get older, I lean on those team members more and more now, because it's their decisive decision making that's enabled me to get through it.
Nice.
Stimulation is paramount sometimes in these situations.
Yeah.
And I'm incredibly grateful for something like that. So I think to anybody that's listening, if you are wanting to do these sorts of things, as Ash has just said there, like, your team members are so incredibly valuable. I remember the first time Reese, who is my photographer here, when I did the 24 hours around the patio, we didn't have a fucking clue what we were doing. And I got it we got it wrong, where he came to help me out and I sent him to bed at the wrong time. That's when I needed him.
Right.
So I remember, this is a very different thing, but this isn't a jungle, but I had olive trees in my garden.
I remember seeing on your social media.
And I was hallucinating. And because the foxes in London are constantly fucking going at it, every time when I was running past these olive trees and they're hitting me, I had it in my head that these foxes were literally going for the jugular. And that was the time where I needed Reese to be like, hey, mate, are you okay? What's going on here?
Yeah.
And I was gone. I had to take myself off to the toilet just to sit there. and just give myself some time, just
you
a deep
delirious?
breath. Oh, I was gone.
Wow.
I was absolutely
Yeah.
gone. But I was going through so, I mean, that was, in terms of pain, that was up there with one of the worst I'd
Yeah.
had. But that was just, it was 80 loops per mile.
Yeah, right.
So it was just a continuation of that. Although I would
Jesus.
change every mile,
Yeah.
I think it was 24 hours in reality of just going round and round and round. It just got to the point,
Yeah.
especially at night time, where I was completely gone.
And it's those points where your decision making is absolutely crucial.
100%. If
It's
I'd have
like-
continued in that moment, it would have broken. Even things like my feet, I couldn't physically run in any type of trainer,
Yeah.
even with socks. And I ended up running an entire marathon in sliders.
That's ridiculous.
Well, I say running, walking, but
In sliders,
but again,
still
it was a
continuing to
case
go.
of I got two choices here.
Yeah.
This isn't going to work. So what can I do? And I think
Yeah.
it's that, like you said, and I think you learn on these jobs.
Yeah,
Our
100.
jobs or
Without
challenges.
realizing you learn as well. I think that's my biggest mistake. Is had someone have died in the Yangtze when doing that hike, I would have felt full responsibility. Of course, their life on my expedition, and it would have been so naive of me. And I started to feel that naivety, and I was just like, just stop now. And that's why I stopped people from on the Yangtze hike. I had these locals showing me and sending to my WeChat photos and videos of bear attacks and men being mauled and bears going into communities, killing families. And I deleted them off my phone because of that. It was almost like I was calling for it to happen. And so with these situations, I don't. It's very much in my mind, especially when I'm going through the darkest stages. But what I found that I did with Mongolia was I knew that positive Ash, me planning Mongolia, let's say, or an expedition in the comfort of my home with a cup of tea, with shelter, warm, belly full of food. It's easy to be positive. And I was so scared with the Mongolia trek because I knew that someone had attempted this before, and he looked like fucking Jason Statham. He was a Navy soldier, a desert explorer. He had single-handedly crossed the Sahara Desert like it was nothing, yet the Gobi Desert broke him 3 times. So there was that arrogance and naivety that I had. And I knew that this positive Ash wouldn't be there in the Gobi Desert. And I was I didn't want it to happen, but I visualized me coming across a well that was dry and how I would push on. And I almost didn't know how to motivate myself because I didn't know how I would react. So I ended up recording a voice note. Went on for about 9 minutes long. I've still got it somewhere, surely. And I told myself I will not listen to this voice note that I have done now in my home when I'm out in the Gobi Desert unless I absolutely need to listen to it. And I did listen to it once, and it was when I almost died, when that water well was dry, and when I knew that I had now missed the point of backup, and it was either do or die. But I couldn't visualize 4 days to the next water source, where I had to ration the last remaining dribbles that I was pulling on the 18-stone trailer. But I could visualize 100 steps. As you said, in the goal, you've got to break it down. So I did 100 meters, rest for 5 minutes, because I could see 100 meters, walk 100 meters, rest for 5 minutes. I did that for 4 very painful days, and that was the difference between life and death. But it wasn't any. And I guess at first, when it hit me and I realized if I don't keep getting up and pushing on, I'm going to die in the desert, I did initially start feeling sorry for myself, and my thoughts went straight towards my loved ones. But then I had to nip that in the bud, because thinking about my loved ones or recording any notes for them wouldn't help me survive what I'm going through. So I stuck with the only option that I had, which was effectively to keep going.
When your time eventually comes up, what is it that you want to be remembered for?
I think I would like to be remembered as the guy that just did not know how to quit, did not stop. Malaria, gunpoint, fights, dehydration, croc-infested rivers. That would probably send 99.9% of people home. And a certain degree, a certain percent of those people probably more experienced, more technically minded. But I had that don't know how to quit. Don't know how to. Now, there's a difference between not knowing when to stop and how to stop, I think I would know when to stop, because I wouldn't want to put my life in any unnecessary jeopardy or risk, because I do have loved ones. I have got a girlfriend. I'm very close to all of my family members and friends. And so I wouldn't do anything too reckless, although some people would say Surinam's pretty reckless. But I make sure I'm 100%. Like with Mongolia, for example, I studied everything that previous guy did and learned where I felt he went wrong and what can I do. And I didn't go to Mongolia until I was 100% sure that I think I've got it. I'm pretty sure I can overcome what he couldn't. Now, if I was 80%, don't do it, because it's a 20% of death. And you don't juggle your life like that. You don't gamble your life like that. And so I think it would be, remained positive, remained dogged, and just fucking did not quit, kept going. And I would like for people to draw inspiration from that in whatever they're facing in life. Because whilst I face lots of near-death situations, I'm also voluntarily putting myself into those situations, So there's plenty of people out there who don't volunteer to go through what they're going through. But I hope they can still take something which inspires them to just keep going, because there is always something on the other side of the storm,
100%, brother. Ash, it's been 4 years.
4 years.
We're back.
4 years. Let's not go another 4 years.
Brother, I just want to say I wish you all the best. It's not about luck. You don't need luck in these situations. You have all the tools in the box. I can't wait to see this challenge unfold. It sounds incredible. Just please be safe. Your head is screwed on. Nothing is worth risking your life.
No.
Life is too precious.
It is.
And I look forward to celebrating with you when you return. And I really hope if anyone is listening to this episode that even has an ounce of power or connection to someone, you've heard what this guy is about today, and there is so much opportunity to inspire so many nations with the work that he does. Just don't let that opportunity slip.
Appreciate that, man. Really do.
Big love, mate.
Thank you, bro.
Be safe.
Quality.
If you enjoyed today's podcast, you fatted biscuit, all I ask of you in return is that you push that subscribe button and leave a review. Unless it's a bad one, you can keep that, your sausage. Your support, though, makes such a difference to this podcast and enables it to grow and connect with even more people around the world.